the April 29, 2014 Town Hall meeting for the town of Austin. I ask you please to stand for the pledge. Good evening. As most of you are aware, some of you I understand are not aware, the town board does a town hall meeting every 6 weeks. This is a special add-on one because our last town hall meeting fell within Passover, so we wanted to make sure that everybody got a chance to see the beginnings and the kickoff meetings for our total town revaluation. And I think it's very important, and I say this every time, that people understand that this is the town-wide revaluation, which is the unincorporated area, the entire village of Austin, and 91% of the village of Briarcliff. The other 9% of Briarcliff are in the town of Mount Pleasant. We are having several of these meetings. I'll introduce myself. I'm Sue Donnelly. I'm the town supervisor. We have Northern Wilshire here, Kim Jeffrey, Jeff Carter, and Eric will be with us in a moment. Oh, there he's coming on the door now. So we want to welcome you. The town board wants to welcome you, and Fernando will do the rest of the introductions. But I wanted to go through a list of some other meetings that we are having around the community, and we welcome having any communities. If you're in a condo development and you want to have a meeting with your condo board, we learned a new word last week, the PUD. Was it PUD? PUD. Or a homeowners association, or a religious organization, or anything, a Rotary Club, anything. You want us to come out and talk to your group, we're more than happy to do that, so that everyone in the community has an understanding of what was happening with this revaluation. Tonight we're having our meeting here at 7:30. It's a town hall meeting. On May 6th at 1 p.m. we will be at the community center with the Austin Golden Age Club number 1. If you don't understand, they call themselves the Junior Seniors, and they're a very feisty group, and they meet on Tuesdays. On May 7th at 7:30 p.m. we will be with Mystic Point, and at Mystic Point, that's a Mystic Point is an HOA. On May 13th, 7:30, we will be at the Austin Board of Education at Roosevelt School. We'll be talking to the people on the Board of Ed there. On May 15th, we will be at the Congregation of the Sons of Israel at 7 p.m. to have a meeting there. On June 14th, which is the Village Fair, we will be in a booth from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Come by anytime, ask any questions. We're open. We want everyone to understand what's going on. And there'll be people manning that booth for the entire Village Fair. On June 16th at 8 p.m. we'll be meeting with the Briarcliff Board of Education at the Briarcliff Middle School. On June 19th we will be doing a Briarcliff public info at the middle school again, and people are encouraged to come. And on June 27th we'll be meeting with the Briarcliff Rotary at 12 noon, and that will be at the Briars Restaurant on North State Road. We've already met with the Austin Rotary, and again, if you need any more information or you want to have your group spoken to it directly, please, we encourage you to set up a meeting through the assessor's office. Fernando Gonzalez is our assessor, and he's going to take over the meeting now, but we just wanted to open up with that. We want to welcome, we have quite a few members of the village board here. We have Mayor Hanauer, we have Trustee Bob Durayo, John Codman, Manny Casada, and we have Victoria Garrity in the back of the room. We have Richard Lyons here and Laura Lee Dixon from the administration. And of course we have you, who's the other most important people, and that's the residents of our community. So we want to thank you for coming tonight. We want to thank you if you're on television tonight. It's another rainy night. It seems that we attract rain with this, so we want you to stay all safe tomorrow when it's supposed to be quite a bit of rain. And we'll talk again at the end of the meeting, but I want to turn it over so we can get started. So, Fernando, I want to introduce this whole group to people. Welcome again.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for coming out to
Hold it close to you.
Learn a little bit about the reassessment project, which we have already commenced. The data collection phase will commence next month. I will do an introduction of the people who will be speaking tonight. And after the presentation, we will have plenty of time to answer all your questions. So please hold your questions to the end, and then we will hopefully be able to get to all of you. Tonight we have from the New York State Office of Real Property Taxes, Mr. John Wall. From Tilec Technologies, Melissa Fair, who is our project manager. From Tyler Technology also, Salim Serna. And from Michael Haberman and Associates, the monitor company, Mr. Ron Haberman and Mr. Tom Deman. Again, we will be glad to, can you hear me?
Yeah.
That's better? Okay, I guess I got to hold it very close.
When you speak to and you ask questions, we ask you to give your name, your address, and you have to unfortunately speak very close to the mic.
As you know, we started this process over a year and a half ago. The initial 9 municipalities that formed the MMRC put together a request for proposal. After reviewing various proposals, we selected the vendor, which is Tyler Technologies, to perform the reassessment project, and we selected Michael Haberman and Associates to do the monitoring. Each one of them will, during this presentation, speak as to how this process is going to go and what is the function that each company is going to perform and how it relates to the assessment that eventually will be the new assessment that will be for the 2016 roll. So without any further comments on my part, I will let Melissa initiate the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming out. My name is Melissa Fair and I'm the project manager. I've been with Tyler for about 13 years and I've been in the assessment field for over 20 years because I started when I was 10. If you attended the meeting 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry to disappoint you that this is the same presentation. I will try to make my comments a little different to make it interesting for you. I promise that at the future meetings we will present different information as we go through each phase of the process. So Fernando talked about MMRC. That's a term you're going to hear a little bit about. It stands for Multiple Municipal Reassessment Consortium. The consortium at the moment is made up of the town of Freeburg, the city of Yonkers, and the town of Ossining. It originally included 9 communities, of which we thought 6 would join. Ultimately, as of this date, only 3 have joined. So the consortium's goal is to find a way to, oops, sorry about that. Is to find a way to economically share services for common goals. So they wanted to save money. A reassessment, especially when you haven't done one in decades, can be an expensive proposition to measure every house, do all that analysis. Some communities that do them more frequently have a database that they've built over time. We do not have that here. We have old cards that are from the 50s and 60s that we have to collect data from. So they joined together to reduce the cost for their communities by economy of scale. The more parcels that we have, the less it costs. So particularly for the smaller jurisdictions like Ossining, it was a significant saving. So the goals for the consortium is fairness, equity, and transparency. And these are key terms that we're going to talk to throughout this 2-year process. So fairness comes into play when we ask every person to pay their fair share of the taxes. Equity comes when we reassess everybody at the same point in time using the same techniques and the same methodology. And transparency is achieved when we educate the public and we share the information about how we came up with your assessments and what process we use, what valuation techniques, so that you can understand how we came up with your assessment. I gave this one away. Reassessment fears. So the number one thing is you're going to pay more taxes. Reassessments on their own are revenue neutral. So what that means is that no taxes are generated from a reassessment. We take the same pool of money and we just redistribute how that is paid by each individual person. So if the budget stays the same, which if you pay taxes for any amount of time, you probably know doesn't happen very often, but if it does, there's no more taxes. So it's just a shift between this person paying this amount and this person paying another. And often what happens are shifts between classes of property, commercial to residential, residential to commercial. When you haven't done a reassessment in decades, it's mind-boggling to think what has happened in the real estate market since 1972. Thank you. So there are whole construction materials. So, central air may not have even existed, or if it did, it certainly wasn't as prevalent as today. Geothermal heat. The way things are constructed and the amenities that people expect in their properties now didn't even exist in 1972. The types of businesses that we have, these pharmacies, CVS, Walgreens, that type of thing, that just wasn't even in existence back then. So it's really even hard to talk about, and it's certainly not something we can predict at this time, what's going to happen to assessments. But as we get closer, we'll share that information with you. And when the time comes to reveal the assessments and send out your notices, we're going to say exactly what every class of property is, what every subsection, neighborhood, how it was affected by this reassessment. So the government will spend more. Well, that's kind of tied to that first one. Again, the budget, if it remains the same, we don't raise any more taxes based on a reassessment. Will your rate change? Absolutely. Because we're at 6% right now of market value, and we're going to go all the way to 100%. So your rate, you can expect to go down significantly. Discover unknown improvements. We can't do anything about that one. We're going to find some stuff. When you haven't looked at properties since 1972, if somebody didn't take out a permit for something, or if it got missed, or it was just measured wrong the first time, we're going to pick up that information. So that goes back to our fairness. We want to make sure people pay their fair share. So we are going to find that, unfortunately, or fortunately, if it's your neighborhood. That's the one getting away with it. Embarrassed by a messy house? I guarantee you your house is probably a lot cleaner than ours. So we don't really pay attention. Our data collectors, this consortium project is 75,000 parcels. That's how many properties they're going to look at. At the end of the day, they're not going to remember whose was messy and whose was clean. So we really don't pay attention to that. We don't note it on our card. Your neighbor's not going to find out. We'll keep it secret. Being away when inspections occur. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that we're going to use for our data collection, but we will be on your property. If you're not home, we're going to be there measuring your property while you're not there. So hopefully we will have identified ourselves. We'll be wearing bright neon yellow vests. So if your neighbor says, hey, some person was walking around your property, if they're wearing one of those vests, then it was one of our people doing that. And all they're doing is measuring the property, and then they get off your property immediately. So here are the phases of the reassessment and the timelines for each. So since this is an overview, I'm going to touch on each one of these briefly, and there's some slides that go with this. So our first phase is the data collection phase, and we are literally just starting. We'll be starting on Monday. That's when data collectors there. We are starting in the town of Greenburgh, and we'll be in Ossining in approximately a month. We're going to data collect until March 2015, so it's going to take us just under a year. We are going to notify you. I'll get into that in a moment. We're going to analyze data. So how do we determine what each person's assessment should be? We take a look at properties that have sold primarily. So we're going to take a look at properties that have sold. We're going to gather that information. We're going to analyze it. And we're going to sort it by different stratifications, by neighborhood, by style, by age. And we're going to develop some models in order to assess properties equitably. That process goes on from May 2014. We start right away. It takes a lot of time. We want to take all the time that it needs to be done right. We'll be doing that through July of next year. We then do evaluation review and informal meetings, and that's going to occur between September 2015 and May 2016. We expect to mail the impact notices on around March 1st, 2016. So again, this is just a brief overview, and I have a little bit more on each of these in the coming slides, but the data collection phase consists of these things. So we're going to do a pre-data collection mailing, we're going to do some exterior measurements, we're going to do an interior inspection, and we're going to do quality control and send data mailers. So the pre-data collection mailing. So we're going to send you about a week. We're going to do the best we can. We have to estimate. Sometimes we get torrential rain, and we can't account for everything, but about a week to 10 days prior to us being in your area, we'll send you a notification telling you that we'll be there, and it's some frequently asked questions. And we actually passed out some brochures today that is exactly what we're mailing out. So you will have an idea about a week ahead of time when we're going to be in your area. So our process is we make one visit to your property between the hours of 8 and 5. And if you're not home during that time, we take your exterior measurements, as I said. It's very important for us to get the information on your property so that we can fairly and equitably assess everyone. And the majority of the information that we collect is gathered from the exterior of the property. So the square footage of living area, one of the major drivers of value, is something we can get from the outside. If you have a garage, if you have a deck, all of that can be collected without you being home. We will attempt to do an interior inspection. So when the data collector arrives on your property wearing their neon vest, they're going to knock on your door. If you're home, they're going to explain to you the purpose of their visit, and they're going to request that you give them a short tour of your house. That interior inspection lasts about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how large your house is. And what we're looking for is room counts, heat type, whether you have a fireplace. We'll ask to go into the basement. What we look for in the basement is to see if there's finishing in the basement. We also verify the heat, so we can tell some things, whether you've got an oil burning furnace down there, whether you've got ductwork for forced hot air. And we're going to look into an attic if you have an attic that has permanent stairs. So those are the types of things. The person that comes into your house is not an appraiser. So they're there to collect data. And how we do that to make sure that we're equitably collecting this data is we give them a guideline to work with. So one of the questions that we inevitably get is of the person who has a fantastic kitchen in their house. How do we collect that information? So what we do is we set standards and we train all of our people to use the same standards. Some of these things are based on subjectivity. There's just no way around appraising information without some subjectivity. So what I consider to be a great kitchen may not be what somebody else considers to be a great kitchen. So we do our best to define those elements so that when we send people in there, we're going to get as consistent as results as we possibly can. If you are not home, we're going to make a second visit. That visit is going to be after 5 p.m. or on a Saturday. So we may interrupt dinner, we may interrupt your birthday party, and we apologize for that. But we're just trying to gather the information because it's just that important that we get all the information accurate as we can. If you're not home on the second visit, we're going to send you a postcard. We're going to ask you to make an appointment with us, and those are the 3 attempts that we're going to make to try to get that interior inspection done. Once that's done, we're going to send a data mailer. What the data mailer includes is all the information we have on your property. If you haven't let us in at that point or you haven't been home, we're going to ask you again to let us in that property. And if there's some information that isn't accurate, we're going to ask that you allow us to come in and verify that. Quality control is a critical element of the reassessment process because we want it to be fair and equitable, I know. But it's very important. So we send out field supervisors that do quality control checks on a certain percentage of all properties, and the monitor is going to have people in the field. So it's possible you'll see a couple people from either my company or Haberman and Associates that we're all trying to have the same goal, which is accurate property data, because the next step is to value all properties using that data. So the next phase is the analysis phase. So much of the analysis that we do is on sales. So we have to make sure that the sales information that we're using is accurate. Not just that the sale price that we're using is really what was paid, but also that the property characteristic data that we're using that's associated with that sale is also accurate. So if somebody buys a property and then immediately puts on an addition, the property data now no longer represents what sold. So we have to carefully identify properties and try to, if it's in the past, figure out what exactly sold. So what condition was that property in? So we're going to use a lot of outside sources other than looking at the property itself, trying to do an inspection close to the sale date. We're going to use MLS and we're going to use some online sources to validate that data. So that's called sales validation. For commercial properties, we're going to gather income and expense information. And what we're looking for there is, what does a property rent for? And we're looking at the real estate. We're not looking at business value. So we want to know if you're in an office building and you're paying rent for that building, how much rent is being paid? The property owner, how much income do they gather for that property? What are their expenses that they incur? And how much vacancy do they have in that property? And we use that information to calculate a value. It's called the income approach to value. And it's usually the approach that is best representative because investors are the typical buyer of investment properties. So if you're buying a commercial property, you want to know how much money you're going to make. So that's going to drive the value of commercial properties. We're going to do neighborhood delineation. And I know that most people have an idea of what their neighborhood is. So we use that sort of as a jumping off point, but our neighborhoods are related to value. So the neighborhood component is the location of your property. So what neighborhood has the same value drivers as your property? So what amenities? Is it close to a highway? Is it close to the train station? So we try to identify. School districts are very, a big driver of value, I would certainly think. And whether you're on a busy road. So all of that goes into the neighborhood delineation. So we're trying to break up the town into locations. And those locations will determine the land value we use for your property and also which comparable properties we select for the sales comparison approach to value. Then we do valuation modeling. So if you've ever had an appraisal done in your property, and I'm sure most of you had if you sold or had a mortgage, the appraiser will look at just your property. So they don't care if they did an appraisal next door if they were consistent or that they were equitable between those two properties. We don't have that luxury. We have to value every single property in town, every church, every school, every property that has never sold or may never sell. We have to value those. So the way we do that is we use that data that we collected and we build mass appraisal models. We use the CAMA system, which is computer-assisted mass appraisal. So we take all those data elements that I just told you were so important for us to collect, and that is going to be used to value your property so you can understand why it's so important. So we're going to look at styles, we're going to look at locations, we're going to look at the age of the property. All of that goes into these models, and we test them versus the sales. So the sales represent the properties where we know what the value is. So if we can come up with a model that estimates the value of those properties successfully, then we know we have a good model, and we apply that same model to all the rest of the properties that didn't sell. And that way we know we have equitably assessed everyone because we've used the exact same rates and tables for every property, whether it sold or it didn't sell. So just an example, we don't go on Zillow or any of those things, but for demonstration purposes, this works. So just to give you an idea, these are the median sale prices, and it's interesting over time, you can tell exactly where the peak of the market was, and you can tell what's happened over a pretty good, 14 years worth of time, and you can see that in Ossining, our median sale price is around $345. And then for Briarcliff, we're up around, I think it's actually $845, but there's some interesting peaks there, like in late 2012. I'm not really sure what happened there. So that's really what we're trying to analyze. So the market's an interesting thing. It's not really science, because what motivates everybody to buy a property is different. If you don't have children, you may not care how many bedrooms you have. Or if you don't want to mow your lawn, then a small lot may be what you're after. So every person is motivated differently. We have to try to make sense of that, try to turn it into a science and a mathematical model. So that's what we attempt to do. So the next phase of the reassessment is the valuation review. So once we've developed our models, we send appraisers out to the field. This part of the project we do from our cars, so we're not knocking on your doors at this point. We're just driving through the neighborhoods. We're taking a look at all of the approaches to value. There are 3 of them. They are the cost approach, the sales comparison approach, and the income approach. Income is just for commercial properties and condo properties if the homestead is based on the homestead decision. So primarily for residential properties, we use the sales comparison. There are properties out there that there are no comparables for. There simply aren't sales, and we don't make them up. We don't guess. We use a secondary approach called the cost approach. And what we do there is we estimate what it would cost to build that exact house today, and then we depreciate it based on its age and condition. So we do have another approach, and what the review appraiser does is determine whether or not the values are equitable, because they're going to be out looking at your entire neighborhood. They're comparing house to house, so they want to know that if we have 2 identical houses, that we have 2 identical assessments. And they're also going to make a determination of whether the cost approach or the sales comparison approach is the way to go. We do statistical testing throughout the process. We meet standards that the state of New York has, and the International Association of Assessing Officers has standards, and of course our own company standards that we meet. So at a later date, we'll talk a little bit about those statistics, but we do have a means to test our models to determine whether or not we're successfully predicting fair market value, because that's really what we're doing. Even if you'll never sell your house, we're still trying to predict what it would sell for. We do documentation throughout the process, so this goes back to the transparency. We really want everyone to understand exactly what we're thinking. And what we do is difficult. It is. I'm not going to lie to you. We have to try to make science out of something that just isn't. But we're going to give you as much information as we can to let you understand why we were thinking that. Where did we get this information from? Why did our land values end up here? What sales did we use to determine these things? So that documentation will be available. And finally, we have informal meetings and grievance day. So at the end of everything, we'll send you out your notice, and you'll have the opportunity to meet with an appraiser from Tyler, and we offer about a 20-minute meeting, and we're going to explain as much as we can about the assessment for your property, and we welcome you to offer an alternative opinion of value and any supporting documentation you have to support your opinion of value. And some people, you just don't know what your property's worth. You never sell it, you've owned it for 50 years, but there is Zillow. There's means of comparability out there. You can look at sales yourself. You can say, what about these sales right here? These are just like my property. And if you've had an appraisal done, you could submit that. And the other thing we want you to look at is equity between you and your neighbors. It's really important to us, so whatever information you can give to us, we're going to consider, because we're not perfect. And there may be information that we just wasn't aware of. There may be specific information about your property, get a crack in your foundation, or a problem with the topography of your land that we just didn't know about. So we invite you to do that. Even if you just want more information about the process itself, we'll be able to provide some data to you. And then if you're still not happy, or even if you don't want to come see us, you still have the same appeals that you do every other year at Grievance Day. So our meetings are a sit-down meeting, one-on-one meeting. You get that time with that person. Text. It's hard because we generally have a lot of people that want to come in and meet with us. So we give you qualified appraisers. They may not be the project manager. Not everybody gets to meet with me, but they're certainly going to understand the models that we use, how the process works. So this is our goal. We want a quality data collection, and a quality data collection is dependent on your cooperation. If people don't let us into their homes, we have to estimate. We don't want to estimate, so we want it to be accurate and reflective of what you really have. We do a detailed analysis and modeling, and that will lead to accurate valuation review and hearings, which will give us fairness, equity, and transparency. That's our goal. I'm going to turn it over now to someone from Paperbin who's going to talk a little bit about the monitoring portion of it.
Hi, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Just a little bit quick history. I've been appraising. My name is Ron Haberman. I've been appraising real estate, residential and commercial for 35 years, and we've been involved. Our company's been involved with assessment, tax certiorari work, and reassessments, revaluations for anywhere between 10 and 35 years. So we've been doing this for quite some time. So what is the job of the monitor? This first screen is just a quick overview of what we're going to talk about, just briefly. First thing that we're going to do is provide oversight of the project from start to finish. Assure efficiency through teamwork. We're going to be an added layer of quality control and assure compliance with all the rules and regulations of ORPS. Which is the Office of Real Property Tax Services. So just a little bit more detail here. Provide oversight, start to finish. Who are we? We are the town's advocate. We're hired by the town to make sure that everything goes well. We're on the town side. We're also on the taxpayer side. We're an extra layer of expertise in the project. That's what we're hired for. Monitored timeline. As we just heard before from Melissa, this project is going to go through the end of 2016. So we're going to track the progress through the whole project because certain dates have to be hit. And we want to make sure that those dates are hit timely and the project will end on time. We're going to open communication. That has to be kept at all times. We're going to track, we're going to meet, and we're going to work with Tyler, with all the participants, starting from Tyler all the way down. We're going to be talking to the town a lot, ORP's office a lot, and property owners a lot, all when the time is right during the project.
Can you see? Good. You okay?
Can everybody see that, the screen?
Yes. Okay. Lesson learned. We won't use light blue with white writing next time.
Technical assistance. There's a lot to this reassessment, as Melissa had said. A lot of difficult tasks are ahead. And we're going to aid when we can, when it's required, at various times in all of these processes that are going to go along. From data collection to informal hearings or informal meetings that Melissa talked about, and everything in between. We're going to be helping with the neighborhood delineations. We're going to be helping with looking at the modeling, which will all help to provide the final values. And it really goes along with valuation oversight. It's one of the same thing. Valuation oversight is we're going to be there and testing everything that's done in the reval by Tyler. And public relations is what we're doing now. We're available for public meetings. We've had a number of them already, and we're going to be assisting the assessor from the town during these public meetings. Again, this is just an example of what we're going to do. There are other things that are involved with public relations, and press releases, letters to help, letters to the public and things of that sort. But this is just the main thing that we do as far as public relations is these meetings. We are going to ensure the efficiency through teamwork. And who is that with? It's with the town officials, the supervisor for your town, the town board, and the assessor. The whole thing is teamwork. Obviously with Tyler Technologies, they're running the show, we'll be working with them. Residential, the public, I'll put these two together here, these three together. Essentially, we're going to be talking to the residential property owners, business property owners, and the public. There are renters out there. There are the people in apartments. They want to be talking. They may want to talk to us also. We're available for that. Real estate professionals. We all know who real estate professionals are. They're brokers. They're salespeople. There could be attorneys at times. Anybody that we can talk to, that we can gain a good knowledge of the area that we're working in. And the more knowledge that we all have, the more precise the number is going to be at the end. Also, we're going to work with the, as I mentioned before, the Office of Real Property Tax Services, ORPS, and they're the people who basically wrote the rules and regulations of how to proceed with a successful revaluation. And full transparency has been talked about numerous times. Everyone knowing what is happening throughout the project. That's what full transparency is. So, we are an added layer of quality control. Together but separate. We're going to be working, even though we are a team, as we said at the very beginning of this thing, we're going to be working separate from Tyler. We're going to be at times in our offices, we're going to be times on the road, driving through the neighborhoods, in the field. We're going to be with Tyler at times, working with them, and we're going to be meeting with the town on a consistent basis, and also with ORPS. We're going to audit training classes. The training classes, has been just mentioned, have just started yesterday. This is for the data collectors, and we're monitoring what's going on during those sessions. Sure, accurate neighborhood delineations. One of the most important things in a successful revaluation is the neighborhood delineations. The home, the building characteristics, the land characteristics, the neighborhood characteristics all have to be looked at very carefully to make sure the neighborhood delineations are done properly. And we'll be looking into that. We'll be testing that. Independent data collection. Here, what we're talking about is that when the data collectors go out into the field, like they're going to be doing in some, not too distant future, that Melissa was talking about, we're going to be doing our own data collecting. Statistically, a percentage of the data that's collected by Tyler Technologies, we will be collecting also. And this is to test the reasonableness and the accuracy of what they collected. In review modeling, it's been talked about before, the modeling is critical, and we will be reviewing every facet of the modeling, every facet of evaluation, conclusions and analysis, and field review of data and values. We'll be looking into everything statistically. We'll be looking at supply and demand issues, and property features, and everything that influences value. The key to what we do is to make sure that the values are fair, consistent, and equitable. Again, as we mentioned before. This is the Office Real Property Tax Services page put in here, and just as a review of what they do, the issue here is basically what it says is no matter what you live in, whether it's a home, a single-family home, or a co-op, or a condo, or a PUD, it will be assessed at market value. The Office of Real Property Tax Services will test the accuracy of the revaluation project, including accuracy of inventory, valuation conclusions, and statistical analysis. At the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the monitor to assure compliance of all of these areas, guaranteeing a successful revaluation project. And also, to test the uniformity of values throughout the various property classes. And as we've said before, the most important thing is the fair and equitableness of all of the values. And that's what we're going to do.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to open it up to questions, and just before we do, I wanted to tell you that the consortium website is mmrc.tylertech.com. It does not work with the www in front of it, sorry about that. And that is screen print. So we have all kinds of information on our website. We'll have the pictures and car information of our data collectors. We'll have a listing of the streets. About the same time as those mailings go out, we'll have a listing of streets of where we'll be in the next 7 to 10 days. We'll have press releases, copies of presentation. We'll eventually have a video on our website, so we invite you to check it out and come back often. And if we have any questions, we'll start with that. Can you come to the microphone, please? State your name.
Good evening. My name is Miguel Hernandez, and I'm a Village of Ossining resident. I do have a couple of questions, and I'll shoot them off, and then you can answer them at will. First of all, I'm not quite sure by what authority the town of Ossining can order a town-wide reevaluation of taxes. I understand they can do this perhaps on an individual basis when a house is sold and when somebody moves. I'd also like to know under what authority can an inspector or a data collector come into your house and ask you questions about your house. In other words, and then what happens to that data that you collect? Is this used solely for this purpose, or does your company, how does it safeguard this profit, this information, and does it sell this information to others who might be interested in knowing more about the neighborhood, more about the incomes of people, which they can deduce from this from the information that you have collected. And I guess I was not clear about this monitor being my representative and the representative of the town. Seems to me that there's some kind of conflict here between the two roles. I mean, when you buy a piece of property, you have your lawyer and the other person has their lawyer and vice versa. So I guess in essence, my question really centers around the authority to do this. Why wasn't there, for example, a referendum, as an example, to impose this thing? And also, I would like to know how much was paid to the company of our tax dollars for this service. Thank you.
I'm going to answer the middle question. We do not sell any data to any entity. I know in the past that a lot of this information is available under the Freedom of Information, and so it may be available to people in that aspect. So you have to understand that the information that we collect is parcel specific. It's not people specific. We are going to have a website where the property data is going to be displayed, and that is for the benefit of the taxpayer, so that you can compare and you can know what's being collected in the assessments that are on your neighbor's property. It's up to each individual jurisdiction what information is available, and whether owner names or mailing addresses are available is one of the options that they have to either not allow it or allow it. If you've been on the internet and you've gone to Google Maps or Google Earth, you will find that there's a shocking amount of information about everybody on the internet. There's pictures of your houses, people walking by your house, car license plates that you can see using this technology. So we collect data for the sole purpose of equitably assessing people. We don't have any purpose beyond that. Our company only works with municipalities or counties or governments, and that's our sole source of income. And so as far as safeguarding that information, I don't know that we certainly don't collect income information on individuals. The income and expense information that we collect on commercial properties is confidential, so we do not give that out to anybody. We only use it for valuation purposes. And so I don't know that if that allays your fears, but that's what we do with that property, with that data, excuse me. As far as being allowed to be in your property, we're not going to force our way into your property. We certainly have no business to be in your property when you're not there. We are going to attempt to collect that exterior information. And so if you don't want the data collector in your house, we will estimate the information. The basis of that estimate is going to be existing information. We do have existing information on everybody's property. It is publicly available at this moment. And we will use that. And we also are going to use the data of properties that are similar. If you're in a subdivision of 1950s houses and everyone's got 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, we're probably going to assume that you also have 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. So our main goal is equity. And so we want to get into everybody's house just so we can get all the information correct, and we can give you an assessment that's as accurate as we can give it. So we can't, make anyone let us in. We certainly hope that you'll be cooperative. I'm not sure if she got that first question. Okay.
Hi, relative to the first question about the authority of the town board.
Who are you?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Who are you?
My name is John Wallum. I'm from the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance, the Office of Real Property Tax Services. I'm going to take a stab at the first question about the authority of the town in conducting a reassessment. Essentially, assessments are the purview of the town's assessor. Now, it is very, very rare, especially in a case, as you heard in Melissa's presentation, the town last did a reassessment back in 1972, which is a little over 40 years ago. There are very, very few assessors' offices that have sufficient amount of resources to do a project of this size and scope in-house themselves. Very, very few. Certainly, I think it's fair to say, and it's no slight against Fernando as the town's assessor, that the Town of Ossining Assessor's Office does not have those resources. So any town in a situation in which it is considering doing a reassessment really has two choices at that point. One would be to substantially expand the size of the town's assessor's office staff in order to do all the work inherent in a reassessment themselves. As you heard in Melissa's presentation, the nature of a reassessment is varied. There are a lot of different phases, including valuation, which I would hasten to add are done through mass appraisal. It is not done as an individual free appraisal, as if you would be getting an appraisal, say if you're looking to buy a property, where an appraiser comes and focuses on the value of your property individually. Mass appraisal involves a lot of modeling based on the sales that are available in the town during a certain period. So what this boils down to is if a municipality, and the vast, vast majority of municipalities that conduct a reassessment of the nature of the kind of reassessment the town of Ossining is doing, will look at an outside vendor because, again, the resources inherent needed to do that simply don't exist within the town. And it's my understanding, I'll defer to Mr. Spector as the town's attorney, but when it comes to a nature of that kind of expenditure, that is something that can only be made or resolved by the town board. In other words, Fernando on his own could not say, well, we're going to spend X amount of money to do a reassessment. That takes an act of the town board to authorize.
I'll just add to it. I'm Wayne Spector, town attorney. Hello, everybody. Under New York State law, the town is authorized to conduct a general reassessment. And I just want to correct a couple of things, Miguel, that you said. Number one, we do not have the authority to reassess property under state law upon the sale of the property. Only certain instances allow for reassessment of property. If there's a building permit filed, if there's an improvement made, if there's an addition made, you can go and reassess a property. You cannot reassess property based on sales. General reassessment is done because it's done to everybody, and therefore it's considered fair. In the New York State law, it's permitted. And this is the way you do it. You can't do it on a piecemeal property-by-property basis. You can only do it if you do it to everybody, because that's the only way it can possibly be fair to everybody. And that's why the law recognizes the right of the town to do that. Just to answer your other question, I think, and if I missed one, please refresh my recollection. You asked why there's no referendum for something like this. New York State law is very, very specific about what can and cannot be put before a referendum. This is not a matter that's legally allowed to be before a referendum. This is a matter before the purview of the board and the board only. New York State law is very specific about what can and cannot be put to a referendum, and this is not one of those matters that can be. So I think I answered your questions.
I'll answer-
my other question was about the cost.
I'll answer
Well, that's
the
not my
question.
question.
I'll answer the question about the cost of the evaluation. We have bonded for not to exceed $1.8 million to do the complete reval, with including the monitors and all the extra staff that we might have to have in Fernando's office to do this reval. We want to make it perfectly clear to everyone that over the past 5 years, the town of Ossining, which is only the town general, which is only the umbrella government for the village of Ossining and the village, and 91% of the village of Briarcliff, it is the government for the unincorporated area, has given back $2.3 million in certiorari's and small claims against their assessment. So in order for us to make sure that everyone has fair and equitable assessments, we think it's very, very important to do this at this time. We had the ability to join Yonkers and Greenberg and come in with a discounted rate as compared to when Mamaroneck did it and Scarsdale did it. We would encourage all communities to do it, and we would have loved if all of Westchester County had done it, much like other counties all over the state of New York. It is to do what is right for every individual, whether you be a business owner, a residential owner, or even a renter in a property.
Well, my question also had to do with this, what is a conflict here, because major property owners, like the GEs and other corporations, they have the resources to fight their their assessment. They have lawyers and everything else. I'm an individual. I'm certainly not at that level where I can go hire a lawyer to represent me, or a company to go and represent me if I feel that the assessment is wrong.
Right.
So I guess I'm asking, where does the...
Well, a residential, if you felt your current assessment is wrong, you would go and you would do a small claims. So you would go to the assessor's office. We do encourage, and we'd like to point this out too at this time, that right now you're in the process of receiving at your houses cards and letters telling you to use these assessment companies, these appraisal companies, to read your taxes. All we could do is encourage you to go in, if you think there's something wrong with your current assessment, to go and visit the assessor's office, and they'll gladly sit with you and go over with you what your current assessment is, if it is going to be, if it is accurate, or if there's something that they can do about it. And they encourage you to do it. Don't spend those dollars on those rebound companies, okay? But your question, you got a little bit off your question, but I want to just talk about the monitors for a second. The monitors were hired to help the town, to make sure that the town gets, the proper job that they're paying for, so you have somebody back you up. But they're actually going that extra step and saying, we're here for you too. We're here for you. The monitors are here for you, okay? That's not in my eyes, that's not a conflict, okay? That means that we're all working together to make sure that this is as accurate as possible and that things are not missed in the whole transaction. I think that Mark is...
Good evening. Mark Seiden, 49 Croton Dam Road in Ossining, the town outside. And also real estate agent in Briarcliff Manor, serving Ossining and Briarcliff. Question for you. Once all the, and this is really for the town, once all the information is collected, and there's obviously going to be a lot of information collected that's going to be very different than the building department, is all the disparity of information going to be shared with the building department? So, for example, if the tax assessor now sees that there's a full finished basement with wet bar and so on and so forth, and obviously the building department doesn't know anything about it, is this information now going to be shared with all the building departments?
All the information that we have in the assessor's office and that the building department has in their file is shared. The purpose of the data collection process is to collect the current information and condition on the property. And we will place a value on that property based on what is collected by the data collector. So if they see 2 kitchens, they will assess it as a 2-family. Whether it is a legal 2-family or not, that is a function of the building department. But yes, they do have access to our data, and we have access to their system, and they have access to our system. This project will also include a new system. We will be implementing a new valuation as well as an assessment administration system, which will be available to all the departments and as well as to the public. But I would also like to point out that under the current system, as you will know, that process is being taking place. Anytime you put a house on the market, or you take a customer to place an offer on a house that is for sale, you do your due diligence and you reconcile what MLS indicates, whether it has 2 kitchens, whether it has 3 bathrooms, and that process of reconciliation is being done right now. And many times the seller has to legalize an apartment or legalize a finished basement and a bathroom. So that is an ongoing process. And yes, the data will be shared.
Good evening. My name is Richard Wishney. Obviously, this whole process makes all taxpayers nervous, even though it's an excellent idea. It's long overdue, and as the supervisor said, It's a shame it's not being done throughout the county all at the same time. And these sessions are very important, and I congratulate everyone involved for taking the time and effort to get out and meet the citizens to answer all of our questions. There's a number of condominiums here in our community. We're spread out throughout the entire town. I'm wondering if you could tell us how many condominiums in total, approximately, there are at this time. And the second part of that, of course, is the big issue for all condominium owners regarding homestead. And if someone could just address how homestead works, when that decision might be made in this process, and how, if the town board decided to go ahead and invoke this homestead process, what that would mean to condominium owners.
In the entire town of Ossining, we have approximately 10,169 parcels as of the 2013 roll. And that is a moving target because, as you know, we constantly have subdivisions and parcel consolidation. We have 1,860 units, of which 411 condominium units are in the village of Briarcliff Manor, 878 units are in the village of Ossining, and 571 units are in the unincorporated area of the town of Ossining. The issue of homestead, which I will attempt to explain, but then I will defer to John, the expert. Basically, it's an issue that has to be discussed and analyzed, or first analyzed and discussed when we have all the data available. And the data that we need to have is basically the value of those units under the current income approach as they are assessed right now, and the value of those units under the market approach. And then we will be able to discuss the effects and the shift on whether we adopt the homestead. And adopting the homestead means that the municipality will be able to assess the condominium units based on the market approach. And as you know, under the current system where the condominium units are assessed under the income approach, basically their assessment is anywhere between 40 and 50% of the market value. I will defer to Mr. John Wallen, who will give us a more detailed explanation on the process, perhaps on the other homestead issue.
Okay, I will try my best to make this a very brief overview. It's fair to say that homestead, first of all, is a tax policy option. It is a decision for the town that is connected to the reassessment because only towns that implement a reassessment are able to potentially adopt homestead. It is a rather complex option, so I'm definitely not going to go into all aspects of that tonight. The town certainly, as part of its due diligence, will be looking at that. This should be in no way taken as an assumption that the town will adopt it. That's something that has to be decided down the road. Just to put this in a time perspective, the reassessment project that Melissa described in her presentation is going to be implemented on the town's tentative roll, which will be filed June 1st, 2016. Now, the point in time at which the town could make an informed decision about the use of homestead really won't occur until all of the preliminary assessments for every property in the town have been established. So you're really talking about a period of the very early part of 2016. I have no doubt that the town has shown admirable commitment in trying to provide as much information to the public as possible, that they will be hosting sessions explaining the homestead option in far greater detail, about which than I will speak tonight, and that will happen long before the early part of 2016. Right now, what I would simply say is that homestead, again, is a tax policy option. The use of homestead, and there are about 45 or 50 municipalities statewide that presently are using this. It is an option that allows certain types of property to be insulated from the effects of a reassessment. Essentially, homestead, the adoption of homestead creates two classes of property, homestead and non-homestead. Properties in the homestead class are residential, 1, 2, and 3 family homes, farmhouses, individually owned and owned mobile homes, all pieces of vacant land that are 10 acres and less, provided that the zoning of those pieces of vacant land is exclusively for 1, 2, and 3 family use. If the land is over 10 acres, or if the use is for something other than that exclusive residential use, it would not be considered homestead. If you have, again, there are some very limited instances where you might have a home that serves as the primary residence of the owner, but the owner perhaps hangs out a shingle, perhaps they devote a room to, let's say, an accountant's office or a chiropractor's office, but essentially that property is essentially a residence, a one-family residence, or a 2-family or 3-family residence. That's going to be homestead. And condominiums. And again, even there, it's not straightforward. Fernando said there are about 1,860 condos in the town of Ossining, all parts of it. Not necessarily all of those condominiums would be in the homestead class. The distinction in the law is that if your condominium complex was built directly as condominium units, or if those units were converted from a use other, and I stress other than rental apartments or cooperative apartments, they will be classified as homestead. Condominiums that are classified as homestead, as Fernando said, will be assessed on a market value basis. In other words, they will be assessed on what they would sell for on the open market as if they were a 1, 2, or 3 family home. Condominiums that are converted from either rental apartments or cooperative apartments. They may be on the roll now as a condominium. They may be condominium ownership. But if they started out as a rental apartment or a cooperative apartment, those condominiums will be classified as non-homestead. And the distinction there is that condominiums that are classified as non-homestead would be assessed on the income basis, as Fernando said, essentially the value of the individual condo units, the sum of those could not exceed the value of the complex as a whole. So effectively, and then I'll make one more statement about a homestead and I'll give it a rest, because we could go on about this literally for a couple of hours. Effectively, what homestead does is it allows a municipality to say, all right, we're going to look at the roll immediately before the reassessment. So in the case of Ossining, that potentially is the 2015 assessment roll, the roll preceding the reassessment. And we're going to separate all the homestead from non-homestead properties. Each of those, obviously, when you look at the taxable value of all those properties, you're going to have a tax pie, if you will, of 100%. And let's say hypothetically that on that roll before the reassessment, the homestead properties paid 80%, and the non-homestead properties, which essentially are anything that is not classified as homestead. So it's the ineligible vacant land, it's the commercials, it's the industrials, and so on and so forth. They are all non-homestead. So let's say that the share of taxable value was 80% homestead and 20% non-homestead. Now let's say the town implements the reassessment, and hypothetically, again, I'm making these numbers up simply for purposes of explanation. Let's say that as a result of the preliminary assessments developed for the 2016 project, that those shares change to 90% homestead and 10% non-homestead. Well, what does that mean? It means the properties that are in the homestead class are going to be picking up tax share. They will be responsible for 90% of the municipal tax, whereas previously they were responsible for 80%. So now, to cut to the real answer here, homestead as a tax policy option would allow the town to say, okay, we know what happened in the reassessment, but as a tax policy option, we are going to allow the distribution of tax between homestead and non-homestead classes to stay, not permanently, but remain at that 80-20 split, the same shares that existed before the reassessment was implemented. I need to stress those shares don't stay that way in perpetuity, but again, instead of paying the 90-10 split, the classes of property for town purposes would pay 80-20 in that initial year. So it does serve to insulate the properties in the homestead class from shifts between classes. Now again, there will still be shifts among individual properties. You can't avoid that whether homestead is an issue or not. And other taxing jurisdictions, let me say it this way. If the town chooses to adopt homestead, which again at this point is a complete unknown, were the town to adopt homestead, other taxing jurisdictions such as the school districts have the potential to adopt homestead for school tax purposes. The town can only make that decision for town tax purposes. And, well, there are also some possibilities for the villages, but we won't go into that right now. Again, that's just a very, very broad overview.
I just want to make it very, very clear that we are going to have many meetings about this issue and every issue out there. We don't do anything in a vacuum here. We do everything out in the open with the public. So we have no intentions of, as the information is being collected, as we're doing stuff, we'll have meetings, we'll all learn a lot more about homestead, whether it would affect us, not affect us, and how it would affect us. We'll make sure that the single-family homeowners are okay, and, you know, we're just going to have lots of meetings about this, so, okay?
That was a good description, and helped a little bit. Now I need 2 aspirins, so.
Yeah, I know.
But I did want to say, is it written anywhere, so those of us that want to explore this on our own can read up about homestead, the rules, and things you just explained?
Yes, the question for those who may not have heard it is homestead written up anywhere so that you can read about it? The most direct source is real property tax law, Article 19 of the real property tax law. It's 1900 through 1906. I will say that for those of you who want to go and seek that out, it is the best free sedative you will ever find. And unfortunately, there is a lot of legal jargon in there. I will say honestly, I'm not trying to dissuade anyone. It is a little difficult to get through. If you go to the Department of Tax and Finance's website, you will find a public information pamphlet that does provide a brief, and I do mean brief, overview of the homestead tax option. That probably is the best source if you're looking at something, or if you're looking for something just to provide a little bit of an overview, but not to get into all the nitty-gritty detail. That's the best I can do.
So again, just, you know, again, we will constantly be putting up on the webpage any sources that we find that explain this thing. We're going to have tons of town hall meetings just like this one. We'll have ones dedicated to this one thing alone, but we need, you know, we just want to introduce this and move this forward a little bit. Yes, ma'am. We have a little line question.
My name is Susan.
You have to talk really close to the mic.
My name is Susan Code. My name is Susan Code. I live at 18 Hungerford Road in the village of Briarcliff in the town of Ossining. I'm also a real estate agent with Houlihan Lawrence. So this is a question from my clients who ask, for those homeowners that taxes do increase with the reassessment, if the increase is onerous, will they have an opportunity to pay it over time, or will it be expected the next tax year that your taxes go up 5,000 and that's onerous? Will you be able to stagger it over a period of time?
The answer to that is no. there will not be, there is no provision as such to defer tax payments of which I'm aware.
Historically, I know there were some homeowners that were reassessed and the numbers go into 5 digits and stuff. Okay. My second question is, once the reassessment is established, how often will you do a reassessment? Will it be every 3 years or 4 years like they do in Chicago and LA? And at the same time, will it still continue to be reassessed upon the circumstances that Mr. Spector was talking about? Additions, renovations, furniture applications.
To answer the first question, the intent is to maintain the roll at 100%. So the New York State recommends a 4-year cycle, meaning a reassessment every four years. But in those cyclical years in between, we would do modeling and adjustments to the roll based on market data, but it would not be considered a full reassessment. We are proposing a 4-year cycle to continue to maintain the roll at 100%. As far as the processing of the building permits and sales, that is very crucial, and that is how we maintain the assessment roll, by processing all the building permits and adding or taking away whatever improvements are either added to the property or removed. And that is the only way that we can maintain the inventory correctly in each parcel.
So in the 4th-year cycle, will you be retaining budgeting, bonding, and other?
Speak closer, please.
Sorry, in the 4th year of the cycle, will you need to hire an outside agency to do a reassessment again?
Possibly. It depends on the staffing levels in the office and and also, as I mentioned before, we are implementing a new software, Tyler IAS World, that would allow us to do this process more efficiently. That is something that has to be decided and discussed by the town board, but the intent is to maintain the roll at 100%. It is a lot less costly to do a reassessment every 4 years instead of every 40 years. Of course, there's that much less data to update.
Thank you.
Andrew Pointer, Claremont Road, Town of Ossining. You explained my homestead question, thank you. The 2% tax cap, I'm not really sure how that would figure into any of this. I don't know if that exactly pertains to property taxes. If so, is this a way to get around that by reassessing everybody else? I'm just trying to make sense of this. And does this favor people who bought, say, at the height of the market, as opposed to those who maybe were long-term residents and who might actually still be on that 1972 assessment? And how does it affect older people who are on the enhanced star, who maybe haven't done anything to their homes over the course of the time being here? Is there, I mean, a step increase would be my next question, which you said no, there is no provision for that. I'm just trying to figure out how, like somebody, say, on Social Security on a fixed income gets reassessed at 2014 from, say, an early 70s, or they bought in here in the 60s, 80s. How are those people supposed to deal with a 30-year or 40-year tax increase? Explain what happens to those people.
Explain what happens. He's going to explain what happens now, so you understand that you're not doing that.
Right. The key thing is that people are not going to be dealing with a 30 or 40-year tax increase. In other words, the assessments are certainly going to change dramatically, but people have been paying taxes all along, and it's in all likelihood people's taxes have been going up from year to year. The key thing about a reassessment, let me say it this way. Property taxes, and again, I know people here pay a lot of property tax. Your property tax funds town, county, school, village, and special district taxes. And for those people who live elsewhere in the county, it may fund city taxes too. The way the legal structure exists in New York State, the rest of the country, most places in the world, whether we agree with this or not, is that property tax is distributed on the basis of our property's value. So essentially, again, let's take Ossining as an example. Ossining last did a project of this nature, a reassessment back in 1972. So right now, the assessments that are on the town's books, the town's roll, essentially are a reflection of how values were determined, real estate trends, if you will, from about 40 plus years ago. The purpose of the reassessment is to say, look, if we know that property tax is distributed among all of us as property owners on the basis of our property's value, the only way we can try to ensure a fair property tax bill for each and every one of you is to make sure that those assessments on the town roll now reflect current values as of today. And by today, again, this project is being implemented on the June 1st, 2016 tentative assessment roll. The applicable valuation date will be July 1st, 2015. So for every property in the town of Ossining, regardless of the nature of the property or its use, value is going to be determined as of July 1st, 2015. Now, you raised some good questions about, well, what happens? People have different circumstances. You mentioned, as an example, someone who may be getting an enhanced star, and I think you said in that property they really haven't done anything to it.
To trigger any sort of reassessment or look at...
Right, no new construction, things of that nature. These situations really are all individual. It's very hard for me to make a sweeping generalization and say this is what's going to happen. But in all likelihood, if you have a home that has not physically changed from what's on the town's records, in other words, the town property record card that was drawn up in 1972 reflects the same house. There's been no additions to it to increase the square footage. You know, perhaps the condition has been maintained, perhaps there's deferred maintenance. I would say chances are that property's value, and again, we're talking about the change in assessment that will occur as a result of this project. I would suspect that's probably not going to be the same magnitude as other properties. Properties where perhaps it's in an area where, you know, let's say down on the Hudson River, there's a value influence, or there's a market interest in purchasing that property, or properties that have had increases in square footage or amenities that would cause the value to be higher. So again, ultimately, this is all going to be determined on an individual property basis. But in that particular instance, I suspect, I can't guarantee, but I suspect that property owner probably is not going to be adversely affected by a project of this nature. I would also add that where property owners have exemptions, whether it's Enhanced Star or the Senior Citizens exemption or the Veterans exemption, you do not lose those exemptions. And again, the one example I can think of which affects very, very few people is the clergy exemption. That is a $1,500 exemption, and when the town goes to 100%, that particular exemption stays at $1,500. But all other exemptions, for instance, if someone gets a senior citizen exemption and they're getting a 50% discount, they're going to get a 50% discount against their new value. The star values right now are adjusted by the town's equalization rate because, again, that's the law for implementing star. So when the town goes to 100% values, the star exemption amounts that you presently receive will be going up. So again, the big thing I want to convey here is that people who have exemptions will not lose them. I assume there's still folks in the town that are probably getting the eligible funds veterans exemption. One of the options the town can consider, and obviously this is a little further down the road as we get closer to the implementation of this project, but the town can consider something known as change in level veterans. It's a different form of that exemption for when a municipality goes through a reassessment. The maximum that a veteran can get under the eligible funds exemption is $5,000. So let's say a veteran is getting that. Let's say that the average change in assessments, and again, I'm just going to pick a number out of the air for easy math. Let's say that the average change in assessments is 50-fold, that assessments go up about 50 times. Well, under that option, that $5,000 would then become $250,000 because that exempt amount is multiplied by the overall town change in level. So again, there are, by and large, with exemptions, the exemption benefit that an individual gets is going to be preserved. More than that, I couldn't honestly say, because again, ultimately, it's really going to depend on the individual circumstance of a property owner and how their property value has changed, not just over time, but how their property value has changed relative to everyone else's property. If you have a property and your property has gone up, let's say 40 times, but the town-wide average is 50 times, that suggests, first of all, that you're not going to be, quote, hurt by the reassessment. It suggests actually that you may have been overpaying all these years. Again, that's something that the reassessment is meant to correct.
I just want to talk a little bit about the equalization rate. We can actually go into a little bit more detail. But if you look at your tax bill, by the way, tomorrow is the last day for your town and county taxes. Please, if you haven't paid them, please get to the tax office tomorrow. But if you, like, when I look at my tax bill, with my equalization rate, my house is just about, well, we show it so often here, and we show how it's gone down in the last 3 years and how the value of my, so I just pray my husband doesn't watch this TV show. But, let's say that my house right now is valued at $313,000, okay? That's what, the equalization rate will go away.
Yes and no. The equalization rate actually doesn't go away, but here's what happens. Our role in this project, ultimately at the end of the day, we also are a monitor to a degree, but ultimately we want to ensure that the stated level of your project, 100%, is a level that you've actually achieved. We want to be able to confirm that, because if at the end of the day we can demonstrate within a reasonable tolerance that you're at 100% of value, your equalization rate becomes 100%. So the equalization rate never goes away, but the point of being at 100, frankly, is it's a heck of a lot easier for everybody to look at a value and say, well, is my value fair? And even though right now legally your tax bills require a statement of market value, I can tell you, again, honestly, from dealing with a lot of taxpayers over the years, a lot of people find rolls that are not at 100% to be confusing. So when Melissa talks about the transparency aspect of this project, that's key to transparency. Having an assessment that directly reflects your market value, it's not an implied number, and all right, as of the date, the applicable valuation date, which again for this project is going to be July 1st, 2015, do you think your property was worth whatever the amount established was going to be? And again, you're free to say, yes, I do, or no, I'm not. I'm sure that there's very, very few people who are going to say, I think it's too low. But there may be some folks who say, I think you missed the mark. I think you may have or may not have taken into consideration a few influences of my property. Here they are. I'd like you to go back and reconsider the value.
Community. The details as they bear out, we'll see if their fears are founded or not. There's one other question with regard to the website. The sample, the questionnaire, the informational thing that you're going to send everybody, is that available to be viewed either online or in some sort of form so people have an idea what to expect, what they're going to be required to present?
Sure. I just want to go back to your point because I want to give you a point of reference. We just have nearly completed the Scarsdale project, and I want to share with you what our results were there. What we found was that assessments went up, 25% of the assessments went up, 38% went down, and the remainder stayed relatively the same. So what is frustrating for us in this field is that what often gets lost in the fear of the reassessment is that there is a really large portion of the population that's paying more than their fair share. So a lot of people worry about the ones that are going to see the assessments going up, but you have to understand those are the people that are not paying their fair share. So I understand that there's fear, and we don't know what that kind of impact is going to be, how many people are going to see their taxes go down and how many are going to, but in our field there's a general rule of thumb that it's about a third, and a third. So 2/3 of you will either see your taxes go down or stay the same. So it's really important for us to get that message out that the only people that should be afraid for reassessment are the ones that aren't paying enough right now. And whether that's a true fear or not, but that's the reality.
With regard to that Scarsdale data, when was their last reassessment townwide? Okay.
1968.
Thank you.
And as far as the data mailer, we're going to do other presentations, and we're going to do one that's completely specific to data collection, and I just actually finished it about 7 o'clock tonight. I have a screen print of that data mailer, and what it is it's got a picture of your house, it's got a sketch of your house, and then it's got some data elements, the style, the year built, the number of rooms, that type of thing. So we can put a copy of that. Unfortunately, we haven't decided on exact formatting of that, but I can put something on our website, a sample. If that's helpful, we can get that out there.
So it's not necessarily just a questionnaire where you would just answer questions
No,
pertaining
it's
to your
not.
property?
It's informing you of what we have on your property, so you can say, yes, this is correct, no, this is not correct. So it's another form of quality control that you have a part in that says, hey, this isn't right, and it's important because this is the information we're going to use to value your house. So we want to give you an opportunity to know what it is we have and to correct us if we're wrong. We will be sending out some questionnaires if you've purchased your property recently within the last 3 years. We're going to send out some sales questionnaires asking about the particulars of the sale so that we are able to validate, which we talked about a little bit. So, because it's really important to us that the sales information that we're using to value everybody's house is accurate, and that we're knowledgeable about the terms of the sale and what property characteristics existed at the time of that sale. So other than that, there's really not any question there. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to this town hall meeting. Appreciate it. Matthew Galata, at Home Place, Austin, New York. It's a little intimidating.
Speak louder, please.
Sure. I just said it was a little intimidating. Thanks again. A lot of my questions have just been answered. So I just want to ask a couple of questions. So I heard this word, right? And Melissa, you can, just elaborate on it. Redistribution of wealth. All right. So I was going to bring up the Scarsdale model. So the typically a third, they were only 25%. Does that mean that those 25% are going to take the burden of the 2/3?
Take the burden?
Well,
we redistribute, and it's not wealth per se, because the income that you have is not anything that we measure. So if you are a millionaire living in a $300,000 house, you're going to pay taxes in accordance with a $300,000 house. There's income taxes, but that's different. So as far as the income level of the person living in the house, and the person that lives, whether it's by age, by income class, it is not something we track. It's not something we analyze. We are strictly about real estate property data. So we redistribute the taxes. So the town needs $100 to operate. We're going to figure out how many people, what's your share, $1, $2, based on the value of your property. So if the 25% that did go up, they're going to be taking a greater share than they had previously.
okay. Thank you. The next question is, I'm a little, I don't have it completely in my mind. Every 4 years, right, it's recommended. But as a new business coming into the village of Ossining or the town or Briarcliff, what's going to make them feel like they are welcome if their property that they're going to buy is different? Meaning like the amount of money they can make from the different towns around here that are not participating. And then if they do it another 4 years, they're going to do it again. And again, other communities that are not doing it. What makes Ossining, because we need business right now, and hopefully our village trustees and our town trustees are, I'm sure they are opening their minds to keeping the businesses here. So I think the businesses of new business coming here and keeping it here, how is that going to affect them? The other thing is the appraisals that your company does. Does the homeowner get a copy of that, or the business get a copy of that, since we are kind of helping to fund this?
Because we do mass appraisal, you know, if you've had an appraisal done on your property, you get a nice narrative report. Obviously, we don't do that for every property, and we don't charge what the appraiser charges per property. So what you will have access to is we have the property record card. On that property record card shows the cost approach, which shows all the different components, what the garage is valued at, what the land is valued at. In addition to that, we'll have a comparable sales report, which will show what comparable sales were selected for your property and some of the adjustments that were made that are based on a model. You would be able to get the documentation of how those rates and costs were generated, what sales we used, what materials. So for cost level, we use a company called Marshall & Swift. They're a leading provider of cost data. So that's one of the places that we may get that information from for what it costs. But a lot of times we get that directly from the market. So if a builder buys a piece of land, builds a house on it, and then turns around and sells it, that's going to tell us the land value and how much that building costs to construct with his profit. So those are some of the ways that we get to that information. So we'll provide that for you, but there is no detailed appraisal other than that property record card and that comparable sales report that we can provide to you. And as far as the, so one of the things that we do with a CAMA system, computer-assisted mass appraisal, is that we want equity. So if somebody builds a house in 2017, we're going to value that house as if it existed July 1st, 2015. We're going to value it the same way we did all the other houses, even though it didn't exist. So that gives us equity. Because we don't want to value this house. So suppose the market goes up between 2016 and 2017. If we value that new house at a level of 2017, we've just created an inequity because we want everybody on the same playing field. So the question with businesses is really tied to, are businesses paying too much or too little right now? And I don't know the answer to that. So if a business is making a decision of whether to come in here, I would hope that they're going to understand that they're on the same playing field as the business next door. I can tell you that as a company, we had to find office space, and one of the most interesting things was the variance in the taxes between this office building and this office building. They were completely comparable properties, but the taxes were so different. You know, that gave us pause, like, why would I move into this place if the taxes are so much higher? I have to pay a portion of that. So if I can spend this dollar amount per square foot in this place and not this place, then, you know, that's going to come into our decision. I think that's what you're getting at. So what we're trying to do is stabilize that. So everybody's paying the same amount. We've treated all of our commercial properties the same. We're using the same rents, vacancy, and expenses for all of these properties. If they're like properties, you know, built at the same time, same quality. So doing it every 4 years just allows us to maintain that equity. So I don't know that that's a negative unless they're underpaying. And, you know, I just don't know that you want to cater to the people that want to underpay.
Thank you. Last question would be, my personal situation, when I got assessed after buying the house in 2005, same square footage, but different rooms, fresh paint, sandy floors, and it was from 8,000 to 14,000. And when I tried to fight it, it was only 25%. I was able to come back. Now, from 8,000 to 14,000, 25% isn't really that much. In this process, I'm not worried about me. Other homeowners or businesses that may see a dramatic increase, does it stop at 25%? Or in the fact if it does go up, can they be granted the same courtesy if it does go up past 25%, that they can get it subtracted by more than 25% if deemed necessary? Because that ratio is not, in my opinion, it's not fair. If it's not fair, it's totally not fair. And the last question, there's monitors and data collectors. Is there going to be monitors to monitor, this is a serious question, monitors to monitor the monitors, data collectors, when you go to all the village officials in both towns and Briarcliff also, just to keep everything on the up and up? Thank you.
Ultimately, Fernando is our monitor. Fernando is the person that is our project administrator. So I guess the answer, and I'm sure that he would tell you that he has monitors as well. So, you know, we're all here to do the same thing. We want the same goal. So that's the answer to that. Now, as to the improvements of your property, everybody knows that you can put some improvements to your property will reap you benefits in the market if you go to sell your house. I get that question a lot, and I usually answer that question with a question. Could you sell it for more after the improvement than before? We use the same basis. So because we have an antiquated system that's being used right now, it's really difficult to measure that because you're talking about a value from 1972, and then you have to say, well, what would this improvement make to the market in 1972? It's really difficult. So when we have a CAMA system, the software that we're using, it makes it so much easier to make sure that those improvements are being handled the same way, that they're being equitably applied. So in the case of what you described, you know, a coat of paint. So when people go to sell their house and they'll say, well, I did this, I did that. You watch HTV and you see curb appeal and all that. Sometimes that coat of paint makes a really big difference, and that's the kind of thing we're judging. So we're looking at the condition of the property. And so maybe the condition of your property was average first before you did those improvements, and then it went to good. Chances are it's not going to be a greater than 25% increase, but it gives us a benchmark to use. And Fernando will have the benefit of this, that instead of having to back into a number, to appraise it as of today and apply an equalization rate, he's going to have the benefit of the system that was developed with real market data from this market, where we can make those kinds of judgments, because that's what we're going to look at. So your neighbor didn't add that coat of paint, and you did. We can measure the value in the market of what that improvement actually adds. So we have the benefit of that, where right now he doesn't. Now, as far as the 25%, that's probably a different question.
No, that's
Okay.
And your other question was, are we going to have a monitor to monitor the houses? I know, Matt. Are we going to have a monitor to monitor the monitors when they do the elected official houses? That's what they're doing. That's what Am I correct, Matt? Yeah. And I can assure you that we will pick it up. We will have at one of our meetings the show how we went to the. We'll show how we went to all the houses, and hopefully everyone will open their doors and let people in and let them see, and we'll make sure that everybody wasn't just a can of paint. It might have been more things added to a house, So we have to be careful, and we do ask everybody that if they did go to, they did something, that to go to the planning, to the building departments now and pull the permits and stuff. If you did something that we didn't pull the permit for. There was one other question, as Mr. Durayo, who's one of our village trustees, comes to the mic. It was a question of if somebody gets hurt. This came up at the very, very beginning. If somebody gets hurt when they're in someone's home, there's no liability of the family. Correct? Or how does that work?
We're required to carry insurance, but my understanding is that if somebody gets hurt on your property because of something that you have a big hole on your property that someone falls into, that you would still be liable for that. But our company, through the contract, we are required to have personal liability, car insurance, all that. I've never experienced
and you're
it.
expecting to have people with the person walks around with
Correct, yeah. I mean, when we're measuring the property, you know, I mean, we really stick to just the outside, and we look for, you know, we deal with dogs a lot, so we train our people, you know, we know what to look for dogs, and we try to avoid, obviously, unsafe situations. It doesn't happen very often, and I've never known where we've, you know, gone after a homeowner. We certainly offer, you know, workers' compensation for our employees if they get hurt on the job and that type of thing.
Good evening. I'm Bob Durayo. I live at 45 Hunter Street, and as Sue said, I'm also a village trustee. And as a village trustee, I am constantly getting questions about overcrowding.
Closer?
Closer, how's that, guys? We get questions at the village board constantly about what are we going to do about all the overcrowding and illegal housing. Right? Constantly. So, my question is, this revaluation will be having people go into these homes that are supposed to be single-family or two-family homes and got 47 apartments. Is this true? Are you going to be able to take that information and give it to the building department so that we can then issue the proper violations and stop this unsafe living condition situation that everyone is so concerned about?
We will list the property as we see it. As Fernando alluded to earlier, is you know, we don't get into the legality of it. If we see 47 living units, which we have defined in our procedures and manuals of what we consider a living unit, we will list it as such. What the town does with that information is up to them, but we were certainly going to pick up the information. We're going to value it as a 47-unit apartment. I don't know really what you call it. In reality, that property probably could never sell that way because it's not a legal unit. You know, it's difficult to try to value an illegal apartment, obviously, because they're not going to sell. But we're going to treat it the same way. Let's just say a three-family, because that's easier. But if it's an illegal three-family, it'll be valued the same way a legal three-family is.
Right.
And whether you know, but we'll provide that information. We as a company, my goal is to get the information and appraise it. It's not my goal to turn people in or, you know, find violations. It's simply not what we do. But, you know, the town certainly has access to all that information. So we can do comparisons if they want to know, this was a one-family, now it's a three-family. That's a really easy report for us. We'll provide any information that they request.
So to be clear, our code enforcement officers will have access to this and be able to compare your valuation with what they have in their database, so that if someone has a single-family home that has 6 bedrooms and 3 kitchens, they'll be able to use that information as probable cause for a violation. Am I correct? I would like someone to get back to me with that.
We do share information. As I mentioned before, on a daily basis as we process sales, that data is available to the building department. As far as whether us providing them the information, the finding, whether that is legally sufficient for them to issue a violation, I do not know. I would defer that question to the building department. But the data is always shared and is always available. And by the way, as I mentioned earlier, we're also implementing a new system, and all the data will be online available, not only the assessment data, but as well as the inventory data.
Great. So just to be clear, someone is going to get back to me and tell me whether the valuation, if there's a change between what the building department has and the new valuation, someone will be getting back to me and telling me whether that's considered probable cause for a violation. Yes?
I think that you need to go to the village administration.
Okay. So I'm referring this question to the village administration. Someone will be getting back to me to tell me whether this is going to be probable cause for a violation. Shake your heads up and down or left and right. Yes? Thank you.
Fernando, what happens if they don't let them in now?
If we're not allowed in, then we will have to estimate or use our best judgment to
On the
make,
outside, but all the rooms on the inside, the kitchen on the inside.
we will have to estimate. Like Melissa mentioned, if we are in an area that is all Cape Cod, 3 bedroom, 2 baths, and it's a Cape Cod, we would most likely assume that that cave is also a 3 bedroom, 2 bath. When the conversation is referring to illegal occupancy, and we all have seen it as appraisers, as data collectors, as real estate agents. You walk into a house, single family, and every room has a lock on it. We all know what that is, but we can only place a value based on its use. If we see 2 kitchens, we will place a value as a 2 family, 2 kitchens, 6 bedrooms. And of course, the information is available and will be available 24/7, so that everybody has a very good idea where that value is coming from.
Hi, Abby Bergman. I live in the town outside. I want to thank you very much for having this meeting. I have a few questions. When the towns that were going to consider the reassessment or the reevaluation, there were several, and I think, as you said, only 3 went ahead with it. There was an article in the Journal News, and the context of it, the implication was that this was a gotcha for condominium owners. And it did state some data from Somers saying that if they applied the full value assessment to Heritage Hills, I think it was, that their taxes would go up by 40%. Then I know there was a case in Larchmont where I think it did not prevail. You may be familiar with that. Town of Mamaroneck did not prevail. First question is, I don't know what the spread was in Somers, but is there any indication, any rough idea in Ossining, if condominiums were assessed at full market value, how much that leap would be as per the 20% that was quoted for Somers?
No. That information will not be available until we have the values and we are able to compare.
But I'm asking based on current assessments for condominiums and homes, that it should be available if you just look at it.
A couple of points. Relative to your observations about Somers, I'm not familiar with the newspaper article to which you refer.
I can email it to you.
Okay, that'd be great. But I will say this, the town of Somers has not done a reassessment. So any conjecture that was made about tax impact is purely speculative.
Right.
I suspect if the article said that taxes would go up 40%, I suspect that the author of the article was probably looking at a scenario in which homestead would be adopted. And I'd also point out that Somers, at least from my understanding, is something of a unique municipality in that I think at least half of the parcels in the town are condominiums. There's a much higher than typical percentage of properties that are condominium. But again, Somers has not gone through this process. So the best I could say is any projection of the tax impact is speculative.
Right. I do have to find the article because there was some quotation that, and it was very clear among the towns that were considering this, we are going to get the condominium owners to pay their fair share. It was angry.
Look, the only thing
It wasn't Ossining.
Yeah, the only thing I could add...
Someone quoted from Ossining. I'll find it for you.
You know, again, when you talk about getting condominium owners to pay their fair share, and again, I'm reading something into that which may or may not have been the intent of whoever said that or wrote that, but I would think ultimately you're talking about a scenario in which homestead is adopted, so market values could be applied to those condominiums that are classified as homestead. And I say that only because that's the only scenario in which condominiums would be assessed on a strict market value basis. In other words, on what they would sell for.
And the taxes would likely go up rather than down.
Likely so.
Yes. Okay. The next question I have is, well, I must say I have to find out and educate myself about the homestead thing because I was not clear about it when I heard it. When you have a condominium, though, you have no land. And when I've looked at tax rolls in Ossining, because I've looked at the rolls, the 2013, which is the last one, there is a line for the value of the residence, and there's a line for the value of the land. Correct?
Correct.
So how is that adjusted when a condominium owner owns no land?
The land, as far as I know, and I am not an expert in the laws that govern the formation of individual condo complexes, but typically the land and improvements that would be considered common elements, you know, if there's a swimming pool or tennis courts or things of that nature, they are typically held in a parcel as common elements, a separate parcel.
I see. Okay, and then thirdly, because this was mentioned before, the governor's new budget, which he said, and there'll be a lot of pressure on school districts, I assume. Don't go over 2% because I want my money back. I want the money back that's going to be coming back to me. So I think this is, there's an intention there to put pressure on municipalities and schools not to go above 2%. But there was also something in there, and I don't know if it was ever enacted, that real estate taxes would also be income tested. Now, do you know if that ever went through?
I know that there are some proposed pieces of legislation that, I think the term commonly used is a circuit breaker.
Right, right.
But as far as I know, those are proposals, they have not been passed.
Okay, my last question is very hypothetical, but maybe you might consider it. Let's say this is a very hot real estate market right now. Let's say one particular community is really, the prices are soaring, and you're going to be using recent sales. Another community, which is very nice homes, is not part of that great soaring price value. How do you then equalize that? Because you'll be comparing something where, oh, these units are really hot and they're going way up, and we have recent sales to substantiate that, but there's another part of town where they're not, but those homes might be of equal value, but they're not, but they didn't benefit from this quick surge in real estate that we're experiencing right now. How can that be articulated in the final reassessment?
Yeah, what the folks from Tyler, in conjunction with the folks from Haberman & Associates, are going to be doing is they're going to be looking at the sales from a specific period of time. And the only, or I suppose the truest thing that I can say is that a reassessment, like any assessment roll, is a snapshot in time as of the applicable valuation date, which again for this project is going to be July 1st, 2015.
Right.
So these folks are going to be doing a heck of a lot of work with sales that have occurred in at least the preceding 2 years, possibly a little longer than that. Now again, understand that the roll and the preliminary assessments and the tentative roll that's filed June 1st, 2016 is going to be representative of that period of sales. When the town does another reassessment, whether that's simply maintaining a level of 100% by use of trending, or whether it's doing another reappraisal, individual parcel-specific valuation of every property 4 years later, again, the goal will be to look at sales in the period of time preceding that particular valuation date and make that decision then. So, of course, it may, you know, to take your example, let me give you a real-life example that isn't associated with Ossining, and this might help. When Nassau County did its reassessment for 2001, immediately after the values were published, there was a great deal of controversy because a celebrity sold his home on the North Shore. And that home sold for $16 million. Yes, they know what I'm referring to.
Was it Alan?
I'm not going to identify
Was it
the
Alan
individual.
Tate?
He sings quite well, though. Here's the point. Based on the sales that were used leading up to that role, a value of more than, I think, 6 or 7 million could not have been justified based on the properties that sold. However, subsequently, because Nassau County maintained its values each year, they were able, based on documented sales evidence, and again, this was an arm's length sale, they were able to make that adjustment. Sometimes you can only justify a value based on the available sales information, but this really underscores the importance of doing this process regularly, because if there's one truth, it's that the real estate market is always in flux, and different properties change in value at different rates. And again, if the purpose of a reassessment is to ensure that we all pay our fair share, no more or less, based on property value, you have to make sure to at least periodically sync the assessments with the indicators of market value.
Right. So if there were a particular community that was really hot and things were going up, that was reflected in the reassessment, that could not be readjusted until the next assessment.
Yes, which potentially could even be the following year.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. I'll get the article for you, too.
Thank you.
I'm just always concerned when I hear about not this whole issue about 2%. It's not really a 2% tax cap. That's a misnomer, and I always want to clear it up because I think we get in trouble as residents. It is, I'm sure he can tell you, a difficult formula. It's based on the villages or the school, and it's a levy, and there's lots of stuff that goes into it, but I'm just always concerned about 2% because some people take that at heart, and then it's not 2%, and they get very upset. But it's still under the levy. You may know that, but
I know that. It was a big issue with Irvington about that. They went to 1/8.
we have about 15 minutes left. So we're going to end with Victoria Garrity, and again with your question.
Am I?
You're on.
My name is Mike Vaughn. I live in one of the condominiums here. I'm a relatively recent.
Closer, please.
I'm a relatively recent resident of Austin. I have a couple different questions for a couple different people. For Tyler, we talked earlier about the gentleman over here brought up the question about safeguards and security, and you rather glibly said, "Well, we don't sell your data to anyone." But we've all read a lot about Target stores who got hacked and millions of people's credit card information, and we've read more recently about the Heartbleed bug. So I want to know, what protections do we have, not about you selling our data, but about you being hacked, and how are we going to be indemnified if you get hacked and our personal information ultimately winds up being used against us?
You have to understand that the data that we collect ultimately becomes available to the public through freedom of information, because what we collect we give to the town, and as soon as we do that, any person can request that information through an FOI request. So the information that we collect is data elements: how many bedrooms you have, how many bathrooms you have, how much land you have. So I'm not entirely sure how that could be used against you. Again, we don't collect any personal data about any single person. It's very strictly.
Do you take photographs?
There are photographs that we do not. Honestly, it's because I don't know the answer to that. But there are photographs that the town has that we have made part of our database. So they are there. Whether they are made public through the website, usually they are. And again, you know, if anyone's put their house on the market, you've got photographs of the interior of the house, which we never do. We only do a representative photograph of the front of the house, which you can get on Google Earth or Google Maps or any of those things. So chances are the photographs will be available, so I'm not going to say no to that.
So we are at risk.
There's no personal data.
I'm not sure what, we do everything we can. We host the data on a server and it's got disaster recovery. And I can tell you that it's really hard to get our data. We have to have an IP address that is registered with the people that we host our data through. So I'm not going to tell you it's impossible because I'm sure Target had all of those things. If somebody is really, really determined, they're probably going to get it. I just don't think that any of the data that we collect is anything that could be used against.
We only have 15 minutes, so I think we got the answer. My second question is for Madam Supervisor. Question was raised earlier that the monitor says that he is on the side of the town and on the side of the taxpayers. They are not the same. You cannot be on both. The town are politicians who seek to be reelected, and therefore your primary interest is in catering to those who can most influence your ability to be reelected. The taxpayers' interest.
That's not true, sir. That is your opinion, sir.
It is.
Okay, and you just said before you were new to town, so what I strongly suggest is you spend every time that we have a meeting, a town hall meeting, you're invited to all our meetings so you can come and actually get to know us. Okay, so you want to make an opinion, that's your opinion, and that's fine. You're allowed to do that, but I would be very careful that we have worked very, very hard to make sure that this is as transparent, this town government is as transparent, and if you go on our webpage at townofoston.org, you can see that everything that we do. Thank you.
I'm on it and I read your emails. But I still think there's an inherent conflict there. Now, the interesting thing to me is, so we've hired Tyler at a considerable expense to do this reassessment. So far, so good. Then we hire a monitor to make sure that Tyler does their job well. And then the question was asked by someone, who monitors the monitor? And the answer is, well, the assessor monitors the monitor. And somebody, I don't recall in which presentation, also talked about the fact that the Office of Property Real Tax Services reviews everything. So we got monitors on top of monitors on top of monitors, and I'm wondering how much we're paying this gentleman and his firm, and why do we need them in this equation when we got all these other people overseeing what's being done?
Well, if we didn't have a monitor company overseeing Tyler, your question would be, well, why don't you have a monitor company? So
we got the assessor and we got the state.
Well, because the assessor has to keep everything else going. It isn't. You don't stop doing your work just to do this project. So we felt it very, very important to have a monitor company, as did Yonkers and Greenberg, in order to make sure that everyone stays. And they'll be at meetings with us. They'll be updating you all the time as the residents. So I can assure you that it is in your best interest that we got the monitor.
Okay, thank you. A final question for, I guess this is for Tyler. As you went through the process, at the very end of the whole process, you alluded to an informal meeting in Grievance Day. As I said, I'm a relatively recent resident of Austin. I went through one of these exercises in upstate New York, in a town in Washington County, Fort Anne. And they had hired a firm, happily, I'm here to tell all of you, they did not hire Tyler, because ultimately their reassessment got thrown out as being totally botched. But my point is, when it came to the grievance day, I submitted a fairly thick file of paper documenting why I did not think what they were reassessing me for. And basically the gentleman said, thank you very much, and told me to go pound sand, not to be rude. And I got nothing. So I then had to go to the time and expense to file a grievance through the state small claims procedure, I think it's called, or something. And the assessment that they had put on me was totally thrown out and was put back to what I had been before because they were totally wrong. So my question to you is, what assurances do we have that when you go through all of this process, and we don't like what we're hearing, and we go to grieve it, that you're actually going to listen to us, unlike the firm that was hired at the state.
I could sit here and say, I think you swear. I'm sure that's not going to mean very much to you. The truth of the matter is from my personal opinion and the people that work for me, I want to do right by you and every taxpayer. It is my job for fairness, equity, and transparency. Those are not just buzzwords to me. I'm a taxpayer. I understand that the decisions that I make and the people that work for me affect you financially. I understand that. I take it seriously. So when you submit information, now I can tell you that we get a certain percentage back in Scarsdale. We had 15% of properties that came to give us information. We didn't change 1,500 because the volume of the information doesn't always speak to the quality of the information. So if you submit to me an opinion of value that you have supported, then chances are I'll agree with you. If you've given me information that I didn't have before that impacts the value of your house, then I'm going to make an adjustment. I'm not going to be stingy about it. I'm not worried about being right. That's not what I'm motivated by. I'm motivated by being fair. So if you've been treated the same way, I have to tell you that not every model is perfect. So we're going to do the very best we can. So John talked about the snapshot in time. So we're going to take that information and we're going to use it. We only have that information. We don't look forward. We don't try to guess. If it's a hot market today, we're going to value it as a hot market. If it's going to cool down 2 years from that, we don't have a crystal ball. We use the information we have. So that's what we build our models on. So at the end of the day, if a property owner is being treated fairly and equitably, maybe we're off by 5%, but if we're off by 5% on everybody, we're still being fair. People are still paying their fair share of taxes. So that's the best answer I can give. And hopefully if you attend enough of these meetings and you hear me talk enough, you'll get that confidence in me and my company. But you know, the reality is that I'm sure that I can't convince you in the next 2 minutes that we'll treat you fairly. But the truth of the matter is, you know, that's the truth for me. We treat people fairly. We'll do everything we can.
Thank you. There are other people who have questions.
Heinz Schlenkerman, Incognito Lane. 3 questions, hopefully short. On the tax bill, there's a full market valuation listed. And I was wondering where this information comes from. And Sue was concerned about the 2 parcels that want to go to Briarcliff, how that affects this, if it does at all. And 3, the security of people coming into my house or walking around the property. I know you said they have multicolored vests on, but anybody can buy a vest. Do they have ID cards, or is there some way? I mean, I've had to call police about people walking around my property, and I don't want to.
I'm glad you asked that because I should have mentioned all of my people have had recent background checks. Our yellow vests have the Tyler on them, our company name. They'll have an ID badge that has the town's logo and the MMRC logo. We'll have their pictures and their car information on the website. We'll provide it to the police departments and to the town officials. So you can certainly verify that information when they come to the house.
The proposed annexation of the election district 17 and 20 will have absolutely no impact on this project. Okay, no matter what happens in that, which is now a court case, they will still be part of the town of Ossining, so their rebound will still be. What was your last question, sir?
The full valuation, full market value on the tax bill.
Basically, what you have on your tax bill, you will notice an equalization rate and an assessed value. If you take the assessed value and divide it by the equalization rate, that's your full market value. This is based on data that we have in our files.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Victoria Garrity. I live in 57 Prospect Avenue. My name is Victoria Garrity, and in the interest of full disclosure, I am the village trustee and the candidate for mayor.
What?
And
You're not talking loud enough.
my name is Victoria Garrity. I live at 57 Prospect Avenue. I'm the village trustee and candidate for mayor, in the interest of full disclosure. I came to this meeting with some information and understanding of what a revaluation is. And I pleased to see that there's a lot of focus on fairness, because there's a lot of fear, as has been expressed, that homeowners' taxes are going to go up. So it seems that what we're talking about is making sure that while the revenue will stay fairly neutral, how it's distributed may change. And I understand that in Scarsdale, there was a very high rate of access permitted among the homeowners. And I would assume that we would be striving to have as high a rate of access as possible for the assessors. One thing that I learned tonight that was very interesting is that if you're granted access to a home that's zoned, say, for a two-family, and you find that it actually is housing more than that, that property will now be paying taxes reflective not as how it is zoned, not as how we currently have it on the books, but as how it is currently being used. So if there are 5 households with their own kitchen and whatever other qualifications there are, it will become taxed as a 5-household property, regardless of what the zoning regulations are, regardless of what their permits have been, correct? And then let me just follow up with one related question. There could be a lot of reasons why a homeowner might say, I don't feel like being bothered by having the assessor come in, I don't have time for the assessor to come in, I'm not sure if the previous owners got a permit to put that bathroom in the basement, how much work is that? There are a lot of reasons why a property owner may not want an assessor to come in. Can you speak to why is it in the best interest, not only for the town as a whole to have a high rate of access, but for a given property owner? What assumptions are you going to make about a property that you're not permitted access to, that they might have been better served by letting you come in?
I want to address the first question because it's not as cut and dry as what you just said, because we have to, in appraisal, we have to deal with the highest and best use of a property. So if a residential house is got 10 apartments in it, we're not going to value that house as an apartment building because it's never going to sell as an apartment building, and I'm not going to value it as it. However, if it's got a 3-family in it, it's still a residential property, we're still able to use the same methodology. So for instance, if you've got 10 units in a single-family house, I'm not going to gather the income information from that property to know it's basically a rooming house. So I'm not going to value that property as a rooming house. I'm still going to call it a residential property. So there are some limits to what we're going to do when we find these apartments. But you have to understand that we don't get into the legality of it because we're simply not qualified to make the judgment call of whether it could be a legal 3-family and they're just didn't go through the approvals. The second part is, it's a really difficult answer because you can make some assumptions that penalize people for not letting you in, and I think that's kind of where you're getting at. And whether or not, I don't believe in that because I don't think that it's fair. There are reasons that people don't allow us into our property, and I don't want to think the worst of everybody because there are some people who are skirting that because they want to cheat the tax system. There are people that will do that with income tax and every kind of tax. There are going to be people who want to avoid paying their fair share. I don't want to penalize the people that they had a sick relative or they were in the hospital or they don't live here. I just don't feel that you should treat everybody as the bad guy because most of them aren't. So we want you to do this because it is fair and equitable. Am I going to estimate wrong? Maybe. Is it going to be in your favor or not in your favor? You have to understand that the valuation, much of what we value based on is exterior information. The square foot of living area is the single most important thing next to the location of your property. Both of those things I can get from the outside. The quality of construction of your house, I get that from the outside of the property. So what am I not going to get by going in? I may not get the room count right. You may have a finished basement I'm not aware of, But, you know, we have ways of seeing that from the outside too. You got an air conditioner in that window. I know you have a finished basement. You got curtains in that attic that we say is unfinished. I'm probably going to call it finished, even if you just have those curtains up there to make it look nice. So that's one of those things that I'm not penalizing you, but I'm trying to make it a guess as to what's done. And I'm going to make that judgment call. If you got curtains in that window above your garage or whatever, I'm going to say it's finished because that's my best guesstimate. And then I'm going to send you that data mailer, and you're going to say, hey, that's not finished up there. And I'm going to tell you, you got to let me see it. And that's the best that we can do.
So you're not going to assume that if somebody doesn't let you in, it's because they did a magnificent renovated kitchen with granite countertops, and you're not making the assumption that it is, dressed to the nines and made as valuable as possible. That's not your assumption.
We're going to look at all the information we have available. If it's been on the market, we're going to look at that information. There's an awful lot on it. If you've ever had your house on the market in the last 5 years, I can go online and see. I can see pictures of your kitchen. I can, and people want to brag about that when they're selling. So we're going to use every piece of information, but in the end, no, I'm not going to assume the worst of everybody just because there are some people. I guarantee you that someone's not going to let me in because they've got that high-end kitchen they don't want me to see. But we're, is that high-end kitchen? Is it in a 1,000-square-foot ranch? Because that's the only scenario that's really going to make a difference, because a high-end kitchen is probably in a high-end house. And I'm going to judge that property based on that. And that's something you simply can't hide.
Thank you. Well, that was another exciting town hall meeting. And we should get used to these, because this is going to be one of our big focuses in the next couple of years. Again, you can go on our webpage, townofossining.org, and it will tell you the entire schedule of meetings that we have. If you live in a condo, a co-op, a HUD, a religious organization. Sorry? Oh, .com. I'm sorry. My gosh. It's townofossining.com. If you have a group you want us to come and talk to, please let us know. We have to move now into a special session of the board. So I'd like sorry?
Motion to adjourn?
No, motion to adjourn into a special session. Second? All those in favor? Thank you.
Hey, excellent job, man.
Present.
Present.
Present. Present.
Supervisor Donnelly?
Yes, it's not executive session,
We're in
it's a special meeting.
special meeting.
The one and only resolution, letter A, legal retention of outside counsel, resolved that the town board of the town of Boston hereby authorizes the supervisor to sign an agreement retaining the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz of White Plains, New York, for legal representation of the town in connection with proceedings commenced by the Village of Barclay against the town of Austin regarding the proposed annexation of election districts 17 and 20 in accordance with the terms contained within their proposal outlined in the letter dated April 25th, 2014.
So moved as amended. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'd like to have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And so ends our meeting. Wow, that was a great town hall meeting. Stay tuned. Stay tuned for more. We'll be talking more about this subject. We'll get into much more detail on the different items. So I want to wish everybody a great week. It's a week and a half till Mother's Day. That was news to me. I thought it was this weekend. So have a great week, and we'll see you next Tuesday. We will be at a work session at 16 Croton Avenue, 7:30. And so this was the 5th Tuesday of the month, and so it gave us the ability to have this meeting, which I think was well attended, and I hope everybody in the that's watching this on film is got some good information, and we'll continue to learn more, and we'll all get better at this as we move forward with this revaluation of the entire town of Ossining. So have a great week. Thank you.